are welcome. Welcome to learn. Welcome to participate. Welcome to join a private discussion about knee surgery recovery and rehab. R&R, Knee Surgery Recovery and Rehab, a private discussion group on Facebook. Search Facebook groups for knee replacement recovery and look for the beach. You are welcome.
Welcome to The Bee's Knees, a podcast full of articles, interviews, clinical studies, and advice about knee surgery, physical therapy, and life after knee surgery.
Welcome, everyone. This is PJ Ewing, your host, the host of the Bee's Knees podcast. Today, we're going to talk to a gentleman who is 9 weeks. Is that right, Larry? You're 9 weeks post-surgery?
Correct. 9 weeks this week.
Great. 9 weeks. Not long ago. And Larry did 2 knees at once. And that's an increasingly important trend, I think, out there. We were just chatting before the call started about surgeons and, do they get paid more? Do they get paid less? In the end, it is something that is happening to younger patients. It's happening to more people who I think in the end feel that they're healthy enough. They don't have other things that might get in the way of recovery besides the knees, and they go forward with 2. And from my experience, Larry, a lot of people are really happy that they did. They don't want to face a second surgery, but it isn't for everyone. I got a live one on the line, everybody. I've got this great guy, Larry, to tell us all that he knows about what led up to that surgery and how it went and how recovery went. I mean, I'm gonna try to pick your brain a little bit as we go. Is that all right?
Well, that should be a pretty simple task for you.
Great. All right, so before we get into your bilateral knee surgery and recovery, tell us about you, your background, sports interests. Just, let's get a sense of who you are.
Okay, well, again, like everybody else, I grew up doing high school sports, football, wrestling, and I took it to the extreme and suffered a lot of injuries during that time. Nothing crippling, but, I kind of overdid. And then as I got into my work career, we started out in the power sports industry, and my father and I owned a marina. And unfortunately, we didn't have all the power equipment. So I just used and abused my body in ways that would never be thought of today. And then for quite a period of time, I worked with Polaris Industries, maintaining their demo fleet of motorcycles and their press fleet. And so I spent a lot of time on my knees, and I think just over time, I wore them out. And probably about 10 years ago, I knew I was in trouble, and I just kept putting it off, and things just kept getting worse. And then, believe it or not, I realized one day I was bull-legged, and the pain was excruciating. I mean, I just got to the point I couldn't do stairs anymore, and it was crippling my life. It was holding me back from all the things that I want to do. I'm an avid snowmobiler. We ride ATVs and motorcycles, and I'm a car nut, and I like to build and crawl around my own cars. And I got to the point I just couldn't do it anymore. I almost needed somebody to help me up off the ground because my knees hurt so bad. So I went here locally. I live in northern New Hampshire, and I went to a place called the Alpine Clinic. They're at the base of Canon ski mountain, and they do a lot of the orthopedics for the Olympics. And so I thought I had found the right place, and I went in, go through the x-rays and so on and so forth, and the doctor came in and said, well, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we can help you. The bad news is both of your knees are bone on bone, a lot of arthritis, and you need to have both of your knees replaced. And I have to tell you, PJ, my wife, who was with me at the time, was the one that suggested the bilateral. She said, well, doctor, can you do them both at once? Because I think I know my husband pretty good, and if you do one, he'll probably never be back for the second one. So that's what got me there. That's what put me in the doctor's office, and that's what brought up the conversation of bilateral.
Now, this is Dr. MacArthur, is that right?
Dr. MacArthur from the Alpine Clinic, correct.
Right. And he, which is, by the way, everyone listening, Douglas MacArthur, amazing name, famous name. This surgeon had no problem. He does bilateral, or was there any concern on his part?
Well, he tried to talk me out of it. He tried everything he could to talk me out of it, and I was very insistent. I told him, I said, if we're going to do this, I want to do them both. So then he asked me a little bit about my background and my health, and even though I'm in my mid-60s, I take no prescription medicines, and overall my health conditions are good. And so he really couldn't find a reason why not to do both of them at the same time, and agreed to do so.
Interesting. So he'll do them. He just really wants to vet the patients to make sure that they're healthy, don't have other, and it's a horrible word, but the word for other complications, other problems is comorbidities. And I know it's not a fun word at all, but it is indeed. I have a respiratory concern, my heart, whatever issues there are that people have, those are the things that surgeons bring up to take people off the list for doing two at once. So he gave you the clean bill of health. That's great. And your wife suggested it, and did you agree with her? Would you potentially have been reluctant to go on with the second knee, maybe?
Absolutely. I'm not a fan of doctors. I hate needles. If I think back about it now, it wasn't as bad as I anticipated it was going to be. Now, that being said, I did a lot of research prior to the surgery, and that's where I found you, an X10, because I wanted to be as good as I could be going into the surgery, so I would be that much better coming out. And so, I had talked with you, and we talked about the X10, and you talked about 7 to 10 days post-surgery, and that's when I said, well, can I get this thing in advance? I really want to do something in advance. And I believe that the time I spent doing my prehab, because one of the goals is range of motion after surgery, and they talk about 0 to 130 being the optimum, the ultimate goal. And so I have to tell you, I don't think I was 0 to 130 before the surgery. And when I say that was up to the point of getting the X10 delivered to my home and working it. When I went for my surgery, I was 0 to 130 range of motion on both knees, and I was very bull-legged. Just over time, my knees had just kind of unstructured themselves, and I was concerned about that and put a lot of pressure on the doctor. I said, will my legs be straight when we're done? He said, well, I hope so. But today I can tell you, my legs are perfectly straight. They work really good, and my range of motion is phenomenal. Currently at 9 weeks, I've got 0 to 131, 132 in my left knee on my own, and with assistance, they can get it back to 145. On my right leg, I can do 0 to 129, 130, and with assistance, I get about 132 to 133. So it's a little stiffer, a little tighter than the left one, but I've definitely got that range of motion, and right now I'm mostly working on strength.
Those are really terrific numbers, and you're so right about getting yourself in position for success, because those 7 plus whatever days you had, how many days did you have it before the X10 before surgery? Do you know?
I'm going to say I had about 10 days prior.
10 days. So those 10 days, it's almost like a tune-up, and it trains your body to go, in this case, all the way to 130 up to 0, so that you're going in with what normal people would say is perfect range of motion. You're not normal. You've got more than the rest of us do with that amazing flexion.
You must have talked to my wife, because she'll assure the fact that I'm not normal.
Well, all right, fine. I'll take that up with her. But it was, you got your body ready, and honestly, we do a lot of 3-week prehab. It's great. In Michigan, Blue Cross Blue Shield, is willing to go that far in terms of paying for the X10 for people. However, we do see very important results 7, 8, 9, 10 days of prehab prior to surgery. So you really kind of got it just right. 10 days, then go have surgery. You go in with great range of motion. Your strength had a chance you could work on that as well. And now you have, a couple days, and then you go home and you're back on the X10. So tell us about that. Anything notable about the surgery? How'd that work?
Oh, yeah. The interesting part is he told me right up front, Dr. MacArthur said, with a double, he said, what we're going to do is we'll do the surgery one day. If we do a single, we do the surgery one day, we keep you 2 additional days, and we let you go home. With a double, he said, we will do the surgery, we'll keep you the 2 days, we'll probably keep you 1 or 2 extra days, then we send you down to Health South in Concord, New Hampshire for about 2 to 3 days, and then when we feel you're ready to go home, we send you home. And I told him at the time, I'm not a fan of that. I'd just soon go home from the hospital when I'm ready to go home. He said, well, we'll see how that goes. Well, I had my surgery on a Monday, and I knew I couldn't pick my position, but I was hoping I was going to be the first surgery of the day, and as luck had it, or I thought it was luck, I had to be there at 6 o'clock for a 7 o'clock surgery. And I would say after I got out of surgery, they had me in the room. It was about maybe noon time, and they came in and asked me if I was ready to get up. I said, I don't think so, but I had to go to the bathroom. So we got up, and with a walker and somebody on each side of me, I walked into the bathroom, did what I had to do, and came back. And when we went through that night, they had me on, I forget what you call that machine that moves your legs, and they kept moving it from one leg to the other. I brought my own ice machine. I went out and bought one of those coolers with the pump, but it was a double. So I was able to ice both knees at the same time, and they just continued to come in and re-add the ice, and they took really, really good care of me. I got to tell you, the hospital was amazing. Now, I had a whiteboard on the wall across from me, and that's where the nurses would sign in. This is your nurse, this is the assistant, this is your meds, this is the time you're getting this, that, and the other thing. And then they had a thing for goals, and I wasn't sure what that was for, so I told my wife, where it says goals, write go home. So she wrote go home, and every time the nurses would come in and they'd change shift, they'd erase everything, put the new stuff on, and they'd erase my go home. I said, write go home. So she'd write go home. And so the following day, the day after surgery, the hospital physical therapy team came in. There was 2 of them, and they said they were here to walk me down the hall. So they got me up, and I had a walker, and I still had an IV, and we started out of the room, and I said, where are we going? They said, well, they had a wheelchair with them, and they told me, well, we're going to walk as far as you're capable. So we walk all the way down the hall, and we get to this other hallway, and they're just kind of looking at each other. And I was walking heel to toe, didn't realize that was something special, but I was walking heel to toe. We turned the corner. We walked about halfway down that hallway, and there was a therapy room there. We walked in there, and he said, okay. He said, are you comfortable? I said, I'm comfortable. He said, okay, we're going to do a step. Well, there was a set of staircases there, and there was like 5 steps. Well, I didn't know I was only supposed to do 1, so I went up all 5. I got to the top, and the look on their face was incredible. And I turned around and walked back down, and they said, well, that was more than we expected. What would you like to get in the wheelchair, and we'll take you back to the room? I said, no, I walked down here, I'll walk back. So I walked back to the room. The next day I did the same thing. Well, that was the day the doctor came in. And he came in, and he had already heard about this from the therapists and the nurses and whatever. And he asked me how I was feeling, and he saw my goal on the wall that said go home, and he said, what do you think about going to Health South? And I said, I want to go home. He basically asked me what I could do. I told him I could. Could you do this? Yes. Could you do that? Yes. And he said, don't make me regret this, but I'm going to let you go home today. So I was in the hospital Monday for the surgery, recovery on Tuesday, recovery on Wednesday, and Wednesday afternoon I went home. Now, I did make a mistake because I was doing so well. When we stopped at the pharmacy to pick up my meds, I went in to the pharmacy with my wife with the walker, and I bought 2 canes. And then we got our meds, and we walked back out. So we were on our way home, and I said, maybe we should stop for lunch. So I didn't want to walk into the local restaurant with a walker, so I walked in with my 2 canes. We had lunch, and I walked out. And on the way home, we were passing my place of business, which is a recreational vehicle store, and so we stopped. I walked in, said hello to everybody, and then went home. Well, I didn't realize how much that took out of me. I mean, it really, really took a lot out of me. So that night was kind of a rough night for me, but the next morning I had physical therapy, so I got in the car. My wife drove me to physical therapy, and they checked my range of motion, and I was already at 100. and they were pretty impressed with that. The following week, I would say, and I was doing my X10 every day. When I came home, I didn't do it on Wednesday because I had so overdone. Thursday, I got home from physical therapy, and it was later in the evening, and I got on the X10 and did both legs, strictly range of motion. I talked to Todd, my coach, and he helped me set the machine up so that, we didn't do any real strenuous or tight work, but we worked on range of motion. And I did that every day. By the end of the second week, I had already had 120 range of motion in both legs. And again, the physical therapists were just pretty much blown away by it. I am no longer in physical therapy. I had my 8-week appointment with the doctor last week, and when I went in, he was just absolutely flabbergasted. You could tell, he just sat on his stool and he rolled back and he smiled and he was so excited and so happy. And I told him, I says, I just want to thank you for doing both of them. He said, well, as rough as it was on you or as rough as you thought it was on you, he said, one of the reasons we don't do two is you're a pretty big guy. And he said, it's as rough on me as it is on you. Because I told him, I was experiencing some pain in my ankles on the outside. They were sore to the touch. And he said, we put your ankles, we wrap them in this thing, and then we kind of box them in. And your ankles or your feet are my handles. And he said, I physically take your leg and work it all the way to the top and all the way back. He said, probably 30, 40, 50 times per leg. I do one, and then I go over and I do the other one. That's the reason you went first. I always take my toughest jobs first so that the rest of the day is easier than the beginning. Where I thought I was lucky, it was actually planned that I was the first one of the day because I was his only double. But right now, after 9 weeks, I don't feel like there's a whole lot that I can't do. I do stairs on a regular basis. There's 24 steps to my office, and one day last week I probably went up and down no less than 10 times during the course of the day, and we're up here in snow country, so I always still have this fear of slipping on the ice, so I'm very careful. But for the most part, I do miss my X10. It was great. It was great exercise. I enjoyed it.
There's a lot to unpack from what you just said. One of the things is, I'm so delighted your surgeon's happy. Who else is happy is the insurance company and Medicare, because you save them, I don't know, it's at least bare minimum for an inpatient facility, bare minimum $1,000 a night if you had gone to that facility. And the amount of rehab that you needed and the quick return to work for the whole system, let's call it, you were a success. If things go wrong, and I've had lots of people on this show where it didn't go as well as you did, and suddenly they start adding up the numbers, and hundreds of thousands of dollars start adding up. And you're 9 weeks, and you're out of rehab. When did you get back to work, by the way? How many weeks later?
I was working on my second week. Not a full schedule, but I was going into the office, and I would go in sometimes every other day, sometimes daily. I'd work about a half a day and then go home.
That's really remarkable that you're able to do that. And I know that you did prehab and you're healthy and you went into this with the right mindset. You obviously got onto the X10, onto your rehab program very quickly. So all of that would allow you to build up strength, build up range of motion, minimize the downtime where atrophy and other bad things can happen, and then get right back into an active life. Swelling's the big problem for so many people.
I'm going to say I swelled like everybody else, but like even when I'd get on the X10 and I'd get off the X10, the first thing I would do is I would go to my ice. And I did a lot of icing. I iced right up till probably you took the X10 away from me, maybe even a little bit beyond that. When you talk about swelling, I would swell more after activity than just laying around. As soon as I would swell, I would put the machine on. Now, a lot of times what I would do is I would get my recliner in the evening, watch TV, maybe a couple hours before bed, and I would get on ice. And so when I went to bed, I had just come off the icing, and that helped. I felt like that helped me get me through the evening, through the night.
What was the ice machine that you like?
Boy, I can't think of the name of it, but it's a small cooler, and it's got a pump in it. It's got a double hose coming out of it, and you can either hook it up to a single knee pad or a double knee pad. I can get you the name of it.
Yeah, let's do that, and I'll put it in the notes for this episode so people can go click on it, because I have a long list of recommendations for icing, but it sounds like you really found a good one for bilateral in this case.
For bilateral, it's perfect. I mean, it's just perfect, and it's not something you're going to invest in and possibly never use again. This machine, you can use a shoulder pad, you can use a back pad, they have ankle wraps, so the machine is something that can be used for multiple different things, and again, even if you take the cost of the X10, I paid for that out of my pocket. The insurance company didn't pick that up. If you just take from the time of my surgery to today as an example, I probably am looking at about $40 a day that I invested in where I'm at this moment in my recovery.
We don't want to pay anything, do we, because of insurance, but that's not that bad, is it, when you really look at where you are?
And I'll give you a good example. I've been around several people that have had single knee replacements, and so many of them, they didn't want to buy the machine from the therapy group, or they didn't want to buy it from their doctor. They only would take whatever the insurance company would give them. I saw people that were using frozen peas and Ziploc bags with ice cubes, and none of them had a good result. They just didn't have a good result. So I think if you want a good result, you've got to invest a little bit in your recovery and yourself, whether it be the X10, whether it be the Mac Daddy ice machine. I ended up buying a Schwinn recumbent bike. Once the X10 went away, I said, well, what am I going to do now? So I bought a stationary bike that's comfortable for me, and by moving the seat forward, I can really tighten up for range of motion, and then I can move it back for strengthening and cardiovascular. And again, did I have to buy it? No. Would the insurance company help me out? Absolutely not. But I thought it was a good investment in my future.
Top of your head, do you remember what model Schwinn that was, by any chance? Or how much it cost?
It was $599.
Mm-hmm. Okay, not cheap. Let's do that. I'll put that in the notes as well. I have a recumbent bike that I recommend all day long, and it's good. It's very cheap, and $139 for example from Amazon. And there's a second bike that's maybe a little step above, but this one's, if you really liked it, I'd like to explore that one also, because I mean, Larry, if there's a checklist, and I think I've written a lot of checklists in my life about knee recovery, you have just ticked every box along the way of how you do it right. Honest to goodness. I mean, from the recumbent bike to a smart icing device, which we'll get the name of, to, in this case, the X10, to paying attention to your physical therapist, to, getting to know your surgeon and really heart-to-heart with him about one or two knees at once, to the recovery all the way to 9 weeks. The only thing you did wrong, of course, was that big day on the way home. You told me, though, also, let's put all of our cards on the table. I think there was something you mentioned about the X10, a little overdoing it on the machine as well. Weren't there a couple of instances?
Absolutely. I did that twice.
Yeah.
Early on, after I got home, I'm very aggressive, and I want this to be over yesterday. I thought you could just get on the machine and set it for 130 and just keep adding pressure until it pushes your leg there. And as I was working the one day, I felt something that felt like it popped. And I get this deep burning sensation. So I stopped immediately. And when I went to rehab the next day, I said, I think I'm going to have to go to the doctor. I think I tore stitches inside. And he said, no, I don't think you did. He says, probably scar tissue. He said, we'll go easy on that. Now, this happens to be my best knee of the two. It recovered and everything was great. Took a couple weeks. It was a little tender. And then I was still working on it, but it was my right leg. And I pulled it way because it wasn't getting the same range of motion. So I just kept adding pressure because at this point now I figure I'm healed. I just got to keep working this thing. So I worked it back, and I got a pain, and it was at the lower right side of my knee. And I guess it's where a lot of your ligaments and such come together. And when I was at the doctor's, I told him about it. And he said, he smiled and he kind of laughed and he goes, that's good. That's good. I said, well, maybe it was good for you, but it wasn't good for me. He said, no, what you were doing, he said, you were breaking up scar tissue. And he said, painful maybe, but he said it's necessary. If you don't do it, he said, a lot of people, because it hurts, they stop. And he said, then what happens is we have to go in and we have to do a manual manipulation. And he said, that's the one thing you don't want to have happen. I did feel like I hurt myself a couple times. It was only because I was pushing myself, but as it turned out, it was something that really kind of needed to be done, and it was beneficial for me.
Well, that's so good to hear. And I'm glad to talk about things that aren't perfect with the X10 machine, because it is not perfect. I mean, their trajectory, the use of it can be, I don't want to use the word uneven, but there's a natural pace to someone's gain in range of motion. And when you're getting to 100, 120, and then of course you ended up way beyond that, but you did it so early, I almost want to say the body is, you're right on the bleeding edge of what the body can take. If you were to go too far, you're going to cause a big problem with swelling and irritation. If you don't go far enough, you're kind of losing an opportunity. But it seems to me that you found that edge and stayed on it. And in your case, there were some little moments along the way that were a little worrisome. But obviously that you didn't set yourself back in a big way, right?
Well, one of the things I found, PJ, was when I knew that I was going to try and get that extra range, what I would do is I would loosen the strap around my leg so that as the machine was pulling me back, if it got to be too much, I could just kind of lean up a little bit. And as you leaned up, let your leg come up a little bit, it would continue to pull it back, but you could take a little bit of that pressure off and you could bear with it. And so I would do that when I knew I was really, because of the two times that I went too far, I was strapped in tight. And then when I knew I was going to push myself, I would loosen the strap just enough that if it got to that point, I could just lift my leg a little bit. And again, I think that one of the things is you have to want to get better. So when I would go to rehab, as an example, tell you kind of a cute story, one of the exercises that he had me do is, and this was real early on, he had me sit in a regular chair and stand up. Well, when I first sat in a regular chair to stand up, if you don't have arms on that chair, you're not getting up. And I sat there, I said, I can't get up. I said, I've never said I can't, but I can't do it. So he came back, he helped me up, and then he put about a 6-inch cushion on there. And then I could get up, and he'd have me put my hands across my chest, and I'd get up, and he'd say, okay, give me 10. And you'd get to the point where you had 8. He goes, oh, that's good enough. I said, no, you said 10. And I would struggle, and I got my 10. We eventually got to the point where we eliminated the cushion. Then he comes, and he hands me this orange, looks like a basketball. It's a weighted ball. And he says, okay, now hold this to your chest and give me 10. I was right back to I couldn't get myself up. He says, okay. So I tried a little hard. I was a little aggressive. So he goes and gets this blue ball. It's a little smaller, a little lighter. Still couldn't do it. So then he gets the pink ball, and he comes over, and I says, okay, I see what you're doing here. Give me the blue ball back. and I just reached down inside of me, and I stood up, and he says, okay, give me 15 to 20. I got to 15, and, I was struggling, and he says, okay, that's good. I said, no, you said 15 to 20. You're getting 20. And that's what I did in every single instance. When he asked for something, I gave it to him. And one of the times I remember he said, give me 2 sets of 10. And I gave him a set of 10, and then I could squeak out 5. And he said, that's good enough. I said, no, I'm going to give you 20, but it's going to be a set of 10 and 2 sets of 5. And I squeaked it out. And I think that it's that desire to want to get better faster and not taking the easy way out that was so much a part of my recovery.
Yeah, I think we can all hear that. I'm there with you. You did a great job of describing that. Let me ask you this, though. Is that just you, or was there something about 2 knees at once, the challenge, the opportunity to get the pain gone and get back to the sports? Like, was there something about this circumstance that was special, or would you say that's how you just tackled life overall?
Well, it's a little bit of both. That is how I tackle life in one regard. But the other thing is, I think when you have them both done, when you come out of that surgery, they're both equally as weak. And if I'd have done one, based on the x-rays that they took and whatever, they said that my right knee was my worst knee. And yet, the one that gave me the most pain was my left knee. So they wanted to do the worst one first. So if they'd have done my right knee, I'd have still been in so much pain with my left knee, I would have had a hard time doing the exercises that they wanted me to do in physical therapy to be successful in my rehab. And so I really think that by having them both done at the same time, that the physical therapy works hand in hand with both legs. Because, I watched a lot of the people in physical therapy that had one done, and all they did was work on that one knee. They didn't work on both of them. And so for me, my strength is equal in both legs. My ability to walk is phenomenal. My ability to walk up and down the stairs. Now, stairs, and I do a lot of stairs because, unfortunately, like I said, my office is 24 steps up. Coming up, I've got that down now. It's really easy. It's comfortable, and I feel safe and secure. Going down is still not as comfortable as going up. But other than that, I feel like I can do just about anything I want to do at this point.
That is such valuable insight, everyone listening. Honestly, Larry, the fact that you couldn't cheat when you're doing your rehab, lean on the good leg, even though it would not have been good, but the fact that you've got to work both knees at once is so important. I don't think surgeons consider that.
I don't think my doctor did. It was never brought up in any of the conversations. But when I did go to physical therapy, it was kind of a joke, by having them both done, you have no good leg to stand on. And I think that was such a true statement. You had to work them both. And I really believe that was a part of the success, was working them both together.
When things go well, right, and they certainly have for you, there are all kinds of advantages for doing two at once, all kinds of them. If they don't go well, then darn it, you're in trouble. But I can't say that I've run across many bilateral patients where there was a problem. When you're cleared to go to bilateral and you're mentally ready, there's sort of a fire in the belly about, let's just get this done. I'm doing two. There's something about people that do that separates them from everybody else.
That statement you made sounds so much like me, because originally I dreaded the thought. Once he told me that we were going to do bilateral, when we got within a few weeks of the surgery, I was so excited. I mean, I'm telling everybody, I'm having both of them done. I'm going for this. I can't wait. And I literally got to the point I couldn't wait. And then once I got the X10 at home for my prehab, and I was able to work my knees and see that I could actually get something out of even these bad, wore-out old knees, I just knew that it was going to be a good result. And thank God it did turn out to be that.
I need a picture of you in any setting. A ski slope in the background, your office, going up the stairs, standing there in front of your office. It doesn't really matter. Because when we're both gone, Larry, in 40 years, 50 years, there's no Larry, there's no PJ, but there's going to be a poster in every clinic in the country of you, the poster child for the perfect recovery. Right? I'll make it. I'll design it. Just give me a picture, and we're going to just share this. I mean, honestly, you are the perfect. It's the perfect story. There's very little drama right here, which is great. You don't want any drama in this case. You just did it right, man.
Well,
man.
I have to say this, BJ, and this is not a commercial for X10. I really appreciate the fact that you and I had that conversation so early on, and that we got together with the X10, because I give it so much credit for the success that I had. I really don't believe that we'd be having this conversation at this level had I not had the X10 to work with.
Well, I'm really glad we had that conversation as well. And I'm so delighted to hear that. In my world, half of the conversations that I'm having are every day, truly, every single day of the year, are, dear Lord, can you help me? Everything's gone wrong. Can the X10 save the day? It's week 8, 10, 12, 14. It's I just had an MUA, or I'm facing one, or good Lord, I have a revision. Larry, I just interviewed this terrific guy that everyone on the show who listens to the show will get a chance to hear soon, a gentleman named Norman. He had 6 full revision surgeries in the last 5 years. They pulled out the hardware 6 times. And finally, I spoke with him today. Finally, he's at 115. Everything looks good. He loves the X10. But I am so filled with horror stories that when I get a chance to talk to someone like you who just did it right, it's so much fun. It really is. It is. You are a poster. You're the poster guy, truly.
Well, I really hope that this will help and encourage people that are thinking about it. If you're thinking about bilateral, I would say by all means go for it. If both of your knees are bad and your health condition allows you to do it, I think it's the best thing that you can do for yourself.
Really good to hear. Did we forget anything? Because this has been terrific, and I think we covered a lot of ground. Anything that is missing from our conversation?
No, I don't think so. I think that we got most of it. And again, it was good that you came back and reminded me about the 2 times that I did scare myself and hurt myself a little bit. But as the doctor said, it was all for the good, and it wasn't a bad hurt. It was something that needed to be done. So.
Yeah, I think it does a disservice if I sit here with all these conversations with people and start painting a picture of, oh, it's perfect, it's great every time, there's never an issue. That's wrong. We have all kinds of challenges with people on the X10. It's life. These are real people, real needs, real circumstances. So it's unfair, and I think my nature is to celebrate a success like this, but I don't want to minimize the in this case, little bumps along the way, because everyone's going to have them in one way, shape, or form. So
sure, I've talked to so many people, BJ, that a friend of mine in Michigan, he had his done, a month before I did. He only had one done, but he thought that was his, opportunity to go home and relax and, just chill out while he was healing. And he ended up having to go in for manipulation therapy, and he's been a mess, and he's almost envious of me. And he said he wishes that he had talked to me prior to having had his surgery, because he would have rehabbed totally different than he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's our home state, for goodness sake, Michigan, for the X10.
Yep, he's out of the Detroit area. Well,
yeah, we're right there too. Well, we can't get to everybody, but what we've just done, Larry, is help a lot of people. I think, what did we do? We shared, maybe there's some news on an ice machine that we'll get the name of, a Schwinn bike that we'll get the name of. We've got the X10, which is good. Oh, you know what? I don't know if we actually, let's just do this for sure. We've mentioned the surgeon, we've mentioned the hospital, but what was the clinic name that you went to, the rehab clinic?
The rehab clinic that I went to was the Alpine Clinic. It's the same facility that the doctor works out of.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, that's right. So Alpine Clinic. So so if you're in your area, New Hampshire, this is a highly recommended facility. Surgeon.
Highly recommended. Yeah, they're in Franconia, New Hampshire.
Okay. And you're not skiing this season, right? You're going to take this one off.
I am not, but the funny part is one of the therapists is she's a cross-country instructor. And she said that she would, at this point, she would take me out as I am right now. She said, "You're ready to go for training."
I'm so glad I asked. That's cool. That's the picture. That's the picture. Neat. Right. That's the poster for the clinics. That's the one we got to get you and on your cross country skis.
Either that or maybe this weekend I'll be snowmobiling. So.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Seriously, get some pictures. Get your wife to take some shots of you. I want to see this. We've never met in person, obviously, but I would love, that'd be fun.
We'd like to thank a few friends of the Bee's Knees podcast, including the Knee Pain Guru, natural solutions for chronic knee pain without drugs, shots, surgery, or painful physical therapy. For more info, visit thekneepainguru.com. We're also brought to you by X10 Therapy. And special thanks to Dr. Justin Trosclair at the podcast A Doctor's Perspective Podcast.
If you plan to go to China for business or pleasure, the main thing that you have to master is the dinner culture. Things like the lazy Susan, should you drink, how to use chopsticks, where am I supposed to sit, gaining and losing face. I'm Dr. Justin Trosclair, and after 5 years of working in China, I took all my knowledge and wrote a book about it. You can find it at adoctorsperspective.net/Chinabook and on Amazon. And while you're at it, take a listen to the podcast, adoctorsperspective.net, where I interview doctors of all specialties, talk about successes, marketing, struggles, and all those types of topics you don't normally hear.
The Knee Store. If you're having a knee done, you just may want to share that news with the world. If so, we've got a mug, t-shirt, or awesome tote for that. Visit the Knee Store on cafepress.com. Shop for the perfect item that reflects your feelings about getting back to a full life after a successful knee replacement surgery. Visit cafepress.com/the Knee Store. Great prices, fun and unique stuff.
The Bee's Knees podcast comes to you from our studio in Lower Manhattan, New York City. We're here week in and week out shedding light on all aspects of knee surgery and recovery. To reach us, send an email to thebeeskneespodcast@gmail.com.